Great, thanks, Rob. Welcome everybody tonight to this session. And as Rob pointed out, I do have some background in sports, and here's my bio. You can kind of read it over, but one thing to point out is I did go through the recruitment process for soccer and I ended up playing at University of California, Irvine. So I do have some experience in that, and I'll kind of give you some strategies along the way on top of being a student athlete. So for our agenda tonight, though, we're going to talk about some quick facts and misconceptions about the recruitment process, about choosing a school. We'll give you some overview about the NCAA. Coach Joe will talk about the recruiting process a bit, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. So that's kind of the agenda for tonight. Feel free to chat your questions if you have any along the way, and then Rob might reach out to us and ask them, or we might save them to a little bit later depending on what they are. So that's kind of the plan for tonight. But what I first started with is some startling facts. I've got two startling facts for you, and I kind of want to go over those first and paint the picture of college admissions before we get into athletic recruiting, because they both tie into each other. So the first fact is it's never been easier to get into college than it is now. Think about that for a second. Some of you might not believe me. And here's fact number two. It's never been more difficult to get into college than it is now. Again, think about that. And now you're probably wondering, is he going bonkers here? Because he just did both sides of the coin here. And here's the problem that we have is everyone is typically in love with the same schools. And with that, I mean, there are thousands of colleges out there, but a lot of us apply, or the people going through college admissions, apply to the same 30 to 50 schools around the country. And that's where it becomes a problem. So the reason I point this out to you is you've got to understand, just the same with playing a sport. A lot of times you see these sports on TV and you go, oh, I want to play at UCLA, or I want to play at Stanford, or I want to play at Duke. A lot of people choose the same schools. Understand that's what makes it competitive. But there's so many more schools out there than what you're seeing on TV. So the point of this all is when you're choosing your schools, a couple things to think about. Don't think of this whole process, recruiting and admissions, as a game of winners and losers, okay? Because you'll get upset, you'll get sad sometimes. It'll be an emotional roller coaster. Take your time, think about what you want out of a school, and find out what's going to be the best fit for you in terms of your experience. And if you look at it that way and you think about it that way, you're going to find a really good fit, and you'll be happy, and you'll have a successful career as an athlete or as a student athlete, and you'll be much happier. So I usually start out when I talk to people about schools and admissions to kind of paint this picture. It's not about going to the best sports school. There's a lot of things to think about when you're thinking about your fit. So here are just some points. And again, Rob said you'll get these slides at the end so you can kind of go back. And I'm not going to cover every point, but it's just not about the sports reputation or they have great facilities, but maybe about academic reputation, or what majors they might have, or where it's located. You know, do you want cold weather or not? What do families say, or counselor recommendations? You know, what kind of graduation rates do the athletic programs have? So there's a lot to think about when you're thinking about the school fits. So I'm just throwing some of those out there because I don't want you to just think about it in terms of the sport that you're playing. You've got to go beyond that. And when you do that, you're going to find a better fit for yourself. So those are just some pointers on looking at that. In terms of your high school career, I kind of diagrammed it out. And what I've circled here is kind of your extracurricular activity. So if you're attending tonight, I'm assuming you play a sport. There's a lot of things that go into when a school looks at you to attend in terms of admissions, from your academic credentials to your non-academic. The fact that you play a sport, and I'm assuming those who are attending play a sport, it shows a lot of commitment, leadership, recognition, and that really bodes well for you in terms of presenting a case for yourself to get into a school. So again, you have an advantage here if you're really committed to your sport. So that's a really good thing. It doesn't mean you have to be involved in 15 different things. The fact you're committed to your sport can be a really great thing that you can kind of build off of through your application process. So I wanted to point that advantage that you have in this whole admissions process to you. So here's some recruiting misconceptions. One of them is a blue chip athlete can get into any school. Best athlete wins in college athletic recruiting. Your athletic ability trumps the courses you take in high school. Test scores don't matter. You can't learn to be recruited. And you'll be happy at a school if you're recruited and get in. And those are some definite misconceptions. And what the truths are out there is, first you got to be a student athlete, and you always must meet the requirements. I was coaching an all-county goalkeeper, one of the best in Southern California, and he wanted to go to a UC school in California. It didn't matter how good he was because he didn't take the required tests to get into the school. So it didn't matter how great he was. He just couldn't get in because he didn't meet the requirements. Schools and coaches look at many factors besides just ability. You know, they look at your grades. You know, can you get into the school? You also must meet a select number of core courses. Coach Joe will kind of go into that. Also, your eligibility hinges on your test scores, and we'll cover that later tonight. And proper coaching can make a difference in this recruitment process. Whether you get help from a company like Webstar Recruits or you have your own coach helping you, proper coaching can make a difference in this whole process. And your happiness may depend on the school fit more than anything else. So that's really important, and those are some of the truths of the matter when we're talking about recruiting. So two important questions that you should be asking yourselves as we get into this whole sports and recruitment process is, the first thing is, do you have the ability to compete at the college level? Okay, and that's really important. And there are different levels, and we'll talk about those and get into those from Division I, II, or III, NAIA. But do you have the ability? And then you're going to determine which level you can compete at. That's important. And number two, do you have the desire to compete at the college level? It's not just, you know, can you compete, but do you love your sport? How much do you love it? I've seen it very often where a student gets into college and they're playing Division I and it's too demanding and they can't handle it and they don't like it and they end up dropping the sport. So it's really important, if you're going to take the next step after your high school career, is how much do you love your sport? Division I is very demanding, and it's a big commitment. So is Division II and III. If you're getting a scholarship, it's even more demanding for you. So it's really important to ask these questions of yourself as you start this process along the way. So let's kind of talk about this overview of collegiate athletics. Okay, there's different associations. Most of us know the NCAA because it's the largest. It's the one we see on TV the most of the time. It's the National Collegiate Athletics Association. It's over 100 years old. There's over 1,300 schools involved in that, and nearly 500,000 collegiate athletes participate in the NCAA sports each year, and it represents over 23 different sports. So that kind of gives you a big picture of this, of the sense of everything. And there's differences in the divisions that we're talking about. As I mentioned, there's Division I, II, or III. And you can go look more information up at ncaa.org. There's the NAIA, which is the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. And then there's even the community colleges. A lot of people take that route where maybe they don't have the grades and they still want to play at a Division I, and maybe they go to the community colleges route. And that's another way to go. So there's a lot of divisions. There are differences between those. I'm sure Coach Joe will get into some of those in terms of, you know, the recruitment regulations and rules. So let's kind of look at this little chart that I made. So in Division I, so what are some of those differences? Well, in Division I, there's almost 350 schools involved. You've seen a lot of them on TV from Florida, UCLA, Alabama, Duke. They must offer, so one of the rules is 7 sports for each gender, men and women. They can award athletic scholarships. And there's also some attendance requirements because of the level that they're at in Division I. In Division II, instead of 7 sports for each gender, there's only 5. They also can offer athletic scholarships, and there's nearly 300 schools in that. And there's some listed here: Cal Pomona, FIT, Pace, Wayne State, University of California, San Diego, and those are Division II schools. The difference between Division III is they may not award athletic scholarships. They still offer 5 sports in each gender, but there's no athletic scholarships here. And that's over 400 schools, and there are schools like Mount Union, Ithaca, the Claremont colleges. So there are some differences. There's a few more differences, but you can kind of read that when we send out the follow-up email. Again, you'll get these slides, but we're also going to send out the NCAA guide that you can get online. We'll have it, and they'll have a lot more details about the different structure of the NCAA. So I'm going to turn it over to Coach Joe now, and he's going to take you through the NCAA Eligibility Center and some of the information associated with that, because there's a lot of important things to understand as a student athlete and what you need to do. So Coach Joe, if you want to take it over here, I'm going to, I'll flip the slides for you. So here's Coach Joe.
Okay, great. How are you guys tonight? Number one, I think with the NCAA Eligibility Center, a lot of the problem is student athletes wait into their senior year, and then they find out, oh, what's this all about? I don't have the grades, I don't have the sliding scale, ACT or SAT. So I think number one is you're in high school. As soon as you realize that you want to be an athlete, make an appointment with your guidance counselor and say, hey, I want to be an athlete. Number one, this way they know to put you in the right courses. They know that you have to have the 16 core courses, and then tell your coach. And you can never start too early. We developed some worksheets. It's a digital worksheet where you can start in your freshman year, you put all your courses in there, and you can see how you go and what you need. And we believe if you start doing it when you're a freshman, that you'll take it more serious, and you'll say, hey, I want to be an athlete. I haven't been taking academics too serious, and now I know what's in front of me, so I could really do that. Also, these core course sheets, ours is digital. Nobody else has these digital sheets. I don't know why, but not even the NCAA. You have to print something out. And even if you're a senior, you can put in what you have in progress and kind of figure out if you're going to clear. Another big thing is for this year's sophomores, 2016 and after, you have to have 10 of those core courses, 10 of the 16 core courses before you start your senior year, the end of your junior year. And 7 of them must be a combo of English, math, natural, or physical science. And that's real important to know. So I say start early, look at our diary, and you have to be just real serious about academics. I know when I was in college, it was like the dumb jock, and it was a lot different then. Well, the NCAA has totally changed. Student athletes have totally changed. Across the board in college, the graduation rate is higher than it is for the general student body, and these are all pluses. And it's just a great opportunity if you're going to go to college and you're going to be an athlete, and then you go get a job. They know what you've been through. They know what you juggled. They know you're a leader, and they know you went through a whole bunch of life skills to get where you are. I guess you can go to the next. Keep in mind there's a sliding scale, and it's going to change, like I said. For Division II, you need an 820 or a 68, and that's a sum on your ACT, and also you need a 2.0. It has what we have on the slide here. Your code is 9999. And Division I, the key thing with Division I that you have to now think about if you're going to be a scholarship athlete is 2.3. If you don't have the 2.3, if you have a 2.0, you're still going to be able to get a scholarship, but you're not going to be able to compete the first year. And some sports it doesn't really matter, like football, but other sports like wrestling, there's a lot of freshmen that are starters, and if they don't think you're gonna to clear the eligibility center, you may not have a scholarship. You can go to the next one. I think
Okay,
that's
here's yeah, so this is a checklist that actually will be in the college athletic guide that we're going to send around to you, or you can get it at ncaa.org. But these are some things you need to do and check off your list as you're kind of going through this to make sure you don't miss any of these. But the first thing is you should register online beginning of your sophomore year, as Coach Joe was mentioning. Make sure you do that early so you can make sure you have all the core courses, you're right on track. The other thing you're going to need to do, or you're going to want to do, is take your SAT or ACT by the end of your junior year. And have those scores sent directly to the eligibility center to make sure you're eligible. And that's where Coach Joe just went over the sliding scale. Very important. One thing to note about the SAT, ACT, you can mix and match your test score, which is great. So if you took the SAT twice, they'll take your best math and your best reading and combine those. So that's really a nice thing about this test. One thing you won't find in the college guide is I added a few other things. For example, as Rob mentioned, I'm with Princeton Review, and we help students prepare for these exams. Well, you could take a free practice Princeton Review exam to help determine what you need. If you're going to be eligible, if you need something better, maybe you have a good GPA, you just need to have a minimum score. Like, where does your score fit in all of this? You can find that out early in the process, and I highly recommend that. I have a slide later that will actually, you can go to princeu.com/events, and I'll show you that slide later, where you can take a practice test online or sign up and find one in your area. If you're in New York, you can go find one at a local testing center for Princeton Review. The other thing to keep in mind is not just SAT or ACT, but do you need the subject tests? Those aren't required to be an athlete, but they might be required to be able to get into the school of your choice. So a lot of competitive schools require those subject tests. So don't forget about those, and you should be taking those probably June of your sophomore and junior year. So keep that in mind, especially sophomores and juniors. And your senior year, in terms of testing, should be meant for cleaning up anything. You need to retest something to get a better score in one section. But by the end of your junior year, hopefully you've at least tested on everything so you know if you're eligible and where you are. Unless you want to really live dangerously and wait till your senior year to do everything, which is what I don't recommend that. That's not a good way to go. So some of the other things on the checklist is make sure you have the core courses, you're on track, talk to your high school counselor about your transcripts, your amateurism certificate during your senior year, and submitting your final transcript. So this is a good checklist of things you've got to go through over the next couple years to make sure you're eligible to play that sport in college. If you're not doing these things and you wait too long, it'll be too overwhelming and you might just not get to play that sport. Okay. So let's move on, and I'm going to switch back over to Coach Joe. Joe, you want to take them through some keys to success in this whole process here?
Sure. I think number one, you have to be realistic, and you have the grades for certain schools, but a lot of good schools have really good competitive athletics. So I think you really have to talk to your club coach or your high school coach, and even other coaches from other teams, and say, hey, am I Division I? Am I Division II? What division you might be. And I think that's really important. Also, just to go back to the other with the NCAA, there's also the NAIA, and a good way to compare that to the NCAA would be that it's basically like NCAA Division II. They have scholarships. They're usually smaller schools, but there's a lot of opportunities there. Next is be a student athlete. Whenever you talk to a coach, a lot of kids, I used to get a lot of athletes. I'd get email. I was state champ. I was this. I had all these wins and everything. And I'd read it. I'd look at the video, and I'd hang up. Not hang up. I would say, well, what's their grades? They never told me what their grades are. So number one, when be a student. When you're reaching out to a coach, make sure you say, hey, I have a 3.0. I'm very serious about my academics and my athletics. And it's a big thing because, number one, like you could be the best athlete in the world, but I'm not going to look at you as an athlete. I'm going to look at you as a student and say, okay, I can get you accepted. Now I'll look at you as an athlete. So that's very important. Um, Proactive. You have to be proactive. Reach out, and we'll get more into this. You have to be proactive, reaching out to coaches. Um, Keep in mind, there's 20,000 high schools out there, so it's not really realistic that a college coach can find everybody. Sure, Alabama football, they got $2 million budget just for recruiting. They'll find you if you're good enough. But some of the smaller, even Division I schools, they don't have the budget. They can't fly you out there. They can't go there. They can't watch all your games. So you have to be proactive and tell them, and send them an email and get on the phone and talk to them. We'll get more into that. And then persistence. When you get, if any of you guys got letters or phone calls from coaches, it feels really good, and you get really excited about that school. But it's the same thing when you're recruiting. I think you got to show them the love. When I was coaching, some kids, they hardly talk to you and this, and then some kids are calling you all the time, and the kid that's calling me all the time might be number 3 on my list that I want to recruit. But number 1 is just not showing me any love, so I'm worried about that, and I don't want to miss out on maybe my number 3. So he or she, for me it was always he's, but he can move up in my depth chart that I have in my mind of what recruits I'm going to be in. Be prepared. When you start thinking about schools, I always say that before you apply to a school, make sure you're talking to a coach. Because if he's interested in you, he might be able to get you in, under the requirements just a little bit. But if you don't communicate, if you're denied, and he really wants you, they can never change that. So know when the deadlines are, if you're going to, apply early decision, or just when you're going to apply to schools, and really start thinking about that at an early age. Go to the next slide. So when does the recruiting process start? The recruiting process starts your first day of your freshman year. And why is that? Well, when you try to get into college, what do? They take your transcript, and your transcript counts on your freshman year. So if you get a D your freshman year, even if you keep improving, that's good. But that D might disqualify you right off the bat when you're a freshman. So you have to take it serious right away. This is a question I always hear about. Coaches want to talk to you, not your mom or dad. Exactly. Like, I'm recruiting you. I want to know what type of person you are, and I'm going to look into you. There'll be a time where I'll talk to mom and dad, and if your parents want to ask questions, that's fine. But don't make the only communication your mom and dad. You guys are young women and young men, and you're going to have to go to college. You have to be on your own, and they're really looking for that. They're looking for kids that really want it, and not that your mom or your dad wants it, but really you. Find the best school academically is number 1. So at our company, what we try to do is find the best school that you can get into, that you can make it. You love your sport, and sport's important to you. And then a school that you're going to play early. And you kind of have to balance this out. And you also want to have a great experience. You want to balance it out. Like if you're looking at an Ivy League, and maybe you're not going to play right away, but you could go to a Division III school. There's plenty of great Division III schools. It doesn't have to always be at Division I. So I think Number one, the best school academically. It's never late. It's too late. It's never too early to start investigating planning for college. Absolutely true. Talk to your coach, talk to your guidance counselor, talk to your family. Let them know. Like some kids, like they want to be a college athlete, and the guidance counselor doesn't even know, and their family doesn't really know what their true goals are. Maybe the coach does. When do you call, write, or email a coach? The rule of thumb that we always use is if you play on a club sport, you might play on a club sport, say like soccer, but you don't start on your varsity high school team. But if you're playing on your club sport, I think that's a good time. So to reach out and email or call college coaches. Keep in mind anybody can call college coaches at any time. When do I send my video? It's the same thing. First, you want to send your highlight video. So as soon as you're playing on a club, that you're getting time, that you can get a highlight video, or your high school team, and that could be your sophomore year, and that's when you want to definitely reach out. Some sports you're going to need a skills video. Volleyball, softball, baseball, you're going to need a skills video more than a highlight video. And what the skills video is if you're a pitcher, you're going to, maybe throw 20 pitches, and the college coach is going to get a feel for how you can play. And keep in mind, the highlight video is for the college coach. It's for you to get recruited. It's not for your girlfriend. It's not for your boyfriend or your grandparents. It doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't have to have all this music, but it just has to have you in a good light. And then full game videos. The highlight video is going to get you noticed in the skills video, but and that will get the coach excited that he wants to start recruiting you. But then he's going to see, or she's going to see that wants a full game video. So make sure you have that available when they ask for it. When can a coach write a student athlete? The basic thing for Division I in most sports. Football's a little bit different, but in most sports they can call you after your junior year, and that's July 1st. In football, they can call you once in your junior year between April and May. Letters start the first day of school, your junior year. College-bound student athlete guide. If you go to our website and look at resources, webstarrecruits.com, you can download the college-bound student athlete guide. I think every parent and athlete should read that and really get to know that. It'll really help you out because the whole recruiting, especially Division I, Division II, with the core courses and everything, it's really confusing. D3, Division I schools, they can call you anytime. Most of them don't start calling until like the end of your junior year or your senior year. How do I know I'm being recruited? This is really big because you have like Notre Dame football. They send out like 30,000 letters in their first recruiting package, and everybody gets all excited. They think they're being recruited, but that's just not the case. It's nice, but it's not the case. When you start getting, so you're a senior, when you start getting letters and calls every week as a rule of thumb, that's when you're being recruited. If the coach is calling you every month, you're probably their fifth or sixth guy. So they want to stay in touch with you. They're interested in you, but you're not their top guy. Their top guy, they're probably writing a letter to every day, and they're calling him definitely or she once a week. So just keep in mind that. Walk-ons, there's certain type of walk-ons. There's preferred walk-on, and then there's just walk-ons. And how do you know that you're going to get the chance? How do you know that you're not going to get cut? I've seen kids, They go there, they walk on, and they get cut the first week. So you really have to talk to the coach and ask the coach. But just a rule of thumb, and it's pretty easy in the fall sports, like football and soccer. They usually start before school even starts. So you're probably in good shape if you're invited to their camp, their preseason camp. So school didn't start, you're invited to their preseason camp, and you probably have a good chance of making the team. And then I think one of the most important things, and I coached for a long time, and in wrestling, there's only 9.9 scholarships for maybe 25 guys on the team, and a lot of it comes down to with the parents that how much money I get. But I think don't choose a school on the price. I know it's easy for me to say. I'm not writing the check, but you have to choose it on the right fit. You have to have a good feeling about it. I see athletes all the time. They go with the price, and that's what's going to happen is you're going to wind up transferring. When you do transfer, some kids never go back to college again, or you transfer and you might lose 10 credits, so it's going to cost you more money, and you're going to stay in school longer. And that's about it. I think that's my last slide. Anthony?
Hey, Anthony, are you there? This is Rob. I can open it up to Q&A if that's the end of the presentation. Did we lose Anthony? All right, so I'm going to have a few questions for you, Coach Joe, based on what you
Okay.
just asked. We have some folks that are responding here. So we have someone asking, you mentioned a video or a skills video. If you're a distance runner, cross country or track, or you do the triple jump, should you create a video or just your raw stats is enough?
Well, I think raw stats are good because the numbers don't lie, but chances are you're not at like college championship level yet. So they're going to recruit you by where they think you can have improvement. And so I think technique, the way you run or throw or jump, I think that has a lot to do with it. If they feel that they can develop you. So it doesn't have to be a great long drawn out video. Maybe it could just be you doing one or two events. It could be like a minute long, but gives them a good feeling for who you are.
Okay, great. That's helpful. We have some juniors here. The question is it too late to start the recruiting process if I'm a junior? And I guess just to kind of rephrase that question, what would you recommend athletes that are in their junior year right now? What would you recommend they start doing in the process?
Well, right now for juniors, you're probably at a really good time. I don't know what sport this person plays, but you're at a good time. You're not too late. You're not really early, but you're at a really good time. So right now, I'd get a video together, and I would pick some schools, talk to your coach, your guidance counselor. Pick maybe 40 or 50 schools. If you have a video, put it on. You can use a service like mine, or you can put it on YouTube and just send it out to coaches. But make sure you include a recommendation from your coach, and make sure you include your transcript. But you're at a good place right now, but you don't wait.
Great. We have a question about gray shirting. So what is gray shirting and is it a good idea?
Gray shirting is, maybe this is a wrestler. Gray shirting a lot of times, the way I think of it is like the Ivy Leagues, you can't redshirt in the Ivy Leagues. You go in there and you compete for 4 years. So gray shirt would be you might go to the Olympic Training Center for a year. So you might pick a school then go to Olympic Training Center, or just train at, maybe if that school has a regional training center, you train at that school. This is for wrestling, and then you'd enroll the next year. And sometimes it's because you have to get your test scores up a little bit, or they want you to have a few college courses under your belt. But if you take classes, you have to take them part-time. You can't be full-time.
Hey, sorry guys, my audio got cut. Can you hear me now?
We can, yes, you sound good. So we were doing Q&A. Could you
Oh,
hear us?
perfect. Sorry, cut.
No
No, I
problem.
missed all that. Everything got cut. So,
Okay, we're starting the Q&A,
um,
but is there anything additional before we do more Q&A, Anthony, that you want to share?
yeah, no, I just had a couple more points that I want to mention just from
Go
my
for it.
experience and going through the process. And one of those is i- just by having good grades or even a good test score or even having your test scores early so the coaches know what you're scoring, whether it's on a practice test or a real test, it makes you more marketable as a student athlete. And it gives coaches peace of mind. The last thing they want is to say or program and you're ineligible after the and then school or the process. So don't be one of those students to say, "Oh, coach, I'll get there waiting and waiting." It's just not a good sign, and it's not responsible of you as a student athlete. And then the second one is and Coach Joe might have mentioned it, but part of seeing if you're good enough for a specific division or something, you need to go and watch games. You should watch them on TV or go to the school you're considering and look at a Division One, look at a Division Two, Division Three, or NAIA, and see if you can compete at that level. Very important to know that, and that's part of being realistic and knowing if you have that ability. And then once you know, and because I've seen players have gone and watched some games and they realize, you know what, hey, I am good enough, and you know what, I probably can get some money, and they realize they could be a scholarship player at a Division II program or Division I program. So it's very, very important that you guys take some of those steps. Um, and another one of those steps, and I mentioned too, just being with Princeton Review, is take the time to take a practice SAT or take your test early enough that you have time for those. You should leave some time where you're prepping for the first one, but you've left time for a test or another two tests. So don't wait too long for that. Otherwise, you'll miss out or you'll miss an opportunity to get your scholarship. So, and the other thing too is if you do decide you need prep, I told you could take a free practice test here on my website, and again, you'll get these slides, princeton.com/events. You're always more than welcome to reach back out to me and tell me what you got and see what my advice would be. If you do need the prep, we're offering a special offer for discounts, so you can reach out to me for that. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. So, and then here's Joe's and my email address if you want to reach out to us. So that was it.
Great, thanks for that, Anthony. So we have a few more questions for you guys, and everyone keep the questions rolling in. And if your question pertains to a specific sport, please mention what sport you're referring to. So we have a question in terms of approaching coaches early. Do you need to be a top player in order to approach a coach during your sophomore year? Should you wait till it's your junior year? What's kind of too early to approach, and what's too late to reach out to a program?
You take this one?
Please.
I think, just like I said, once you have film that you're playing, I think you should reach out to a coach.
Okay,
Every
great.
program needs certain type of athlete, and it just goes back to being realistic, like what program you're going to fit into. Like, talk to your coach and talk to your club coach, and are you a Division One player? Are you Division Two? Are you Division Three?
So before you reach out, speak to your current, either your high school coach or your club coach, about the programs you want to reach out to, and kind of see what their thoughts are as well.
definitely.
Someone asked, getting discovered at a camp or a tournament, is that something that really happens, or is that more of a myth? I've heard that coaches come to see players they already know and not new discoveries. So at camps and tournaments, does that happen where athletes get discovered?
I, the rule of thumb for me is if you're going to a camp or a showcase, you could get discovered, but you have a better chance that if you email that coach and say, hey, I'm going to be in North Carolina next weekend at the ABC, whatever sport event it is. Here's my video. Here's my transcripts. I'd love for you to come evaluate me. Also keep in mind when a coach goes to an event, and wrestling's a lot different, but when a coach goes to an event, they might have a list of 10 kids they want to see already. And if it's like soccer, those kids might be maybe not even at the same venue. So sometimes you got to get a little lucky, like maybe you're playing against a good goalie and you score a few goals, but you have to reach out before.
Okay, great. In terms of film, is that something that you can film? You can either have like a professional service do it, or you can have even just like a relative or a parent do it, and then you can post that on YouTube as well as on your site or other. I mean, what's the best place to kind of, I guess, what's the best way to do the process of filming, from filming it to posting it to promoting it?
Filming, number one, is go out and buy a good tripod. I can't tell you how many films I get that the mom or the dad or the brother or the sister is holding the camera in the hands, and a college coach doesn't want to see that. If they're watching film all day, you'll have them dizzy in 2 minutes. So number one, go get a tripod. You can film the games yourself. That's totally fine.
Okay, great. And then how about for posting and promoting?
Well, posting, like I would like to think that everyone would sign up for a free profile on my website and post it. But if you don't, use another website or use, just use YouTube. But like I said, my site's easy. It's everything that a college coach needs to recruit you.
Perfect. What about explaining injury? So if you're injured and miss a season or part of a season, or your play goes down, your stats go down as a result, is there an easy way to explain that?
Well, no coach wants to recruit a guy that has excuses when he's bringing him in. Um, I mean, so there's no excuses. It is what it is. If you only played 5 games, you say, here's my 5 games. Say it's football. Here's my 5 games, and I think I did well, and I think I fit in your program. But don't forget, it's just not about you. Maybe that's your senior year, but maybe you have your junior year that you did really well. But nobody wants to hear excuses. It's just, it's what it is, and there's no way to get around it. And the most important thing is to be honest with the coach.
Great. We have a student that signed up at the NCAA Eligibility Center. And they say, what's next? Should I also email coaches at schools I like with a copy of my transcript? They can see the SAT scores, etc., on the NCAA website, right?
They can, but that's only if they're recruiting you. They'll go in there and look at it. So, and some student athletes get confused by this. Signing up for the NCAA eligibility isn't a recruiting process. That's how they certify you. No coach is going to go in there and look for prospects. They have to know who you are already. So once again, you have to be proactive. Make sure you send your transcript. Make sure you tell them that academics is important to you. Make sure you add your video, and also get a recommendation from a coach, whether it's your club coach, whether it's a recommendation like from a company like us, we give recommendations, or it's your high school coach. Your video is going to be watched more if you have a recommendation.
And for those recommendations,
I
what's the
don't think
best?
you need to.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't think sending a transcript to your coach. I mean, if you can indicate in an email or a letter with your GPA, your test score, and give a quick summary, because they're not going to go through your whole transcript, especially if it's the initial. They could look at that later. So initially, you want to, if you're trying to get them interested or a coach interested, the same thing too. The first thing you're not going to do is send a coach a 2 long hour game, a football game. You're going to send them some highlights first or something like that before you send them a full game film. Same thing with the idea of transcripts and grades and test scores. Give them a little summary to show them, hey, I'm a pretty good student, to kind of catch his interest, as well as, what you've done athletically. You don't need to give them like, 10-page report or something. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What about a recommendation? So you mentioned recommendation letter and how that's important. What's the best, like, what are the most effective recommendation letters from a coach or from a service?
From a service like mine, well, if you're a client, we evaluate you academically and athletically. We have experts in every sport, and we watch you play, through video, and then we recommend you to schools that we think fit you, not really the schools you want to go to, the schools we think that you can compete at and do well at academically and athletically. But if you're talking about your high school coach or your club coach, I think it's real important to involve him or her in the process.
Okay, great. We have time for just a couple more questions here. We have a question: is it better to send a letter or an email to a coach the first time?
Well, it's 2013. Everybody's using email. I think it's nice and easy, and you can get a response quickly.
Okay, great. Any more questions? What if you play multiple sports? Is it possible to get recruited for more than one sport, or should you focus on one, make a determination? What do you recommend for those multi-sport stars? And how does that work with scholarship money?
Well, what I think, and Anthony can say what he thinks, but I think that sure, lots of athletes get recruited for multiple sports, and in the lower levels like Division III, they kind of like it because sometimes these sports are for enrollment, and there have been Division I athletes, in football that did maybe track and those type of things, but you have to start deciding what's your best sport. But I always looked at it as like, if you're good enough to play 3 sports in high school, I say do it. I played football and I wrestled, and though I wrestled in college, I still remember as football being some of the greatest moments when I was in high school. And I don't think that this is just my opinion. I don't think you should take that experience away from you, especially in high school. I think you should just enjoy the whole thing. And if you want to play 3 sports, do so. If you're good enough, some guys are good enough, or girls, to play 2 sports in college.
Yeah, I was for me personally, I played soccer, baseball, and basketball in high school, 3 sports. When I went to college, I played actually soccer and baseball, except the baseball coach at my school wanted me to pick one. Well, I liked soccer better than baseball, so I chose soccer. Fortunately for me, the baseball program ended up closing when Title IX came out, so I ended up choosing the right sport. So for me, there's a couple ways to look at it. You can use it to your advantage if you're in the recruitment process. If you're, a coach is recruiting you, can say, hey, well, I play 2 sports. I love both sports. But if I were to choose one and go to college, think about how much better I can get. So, in a way, it could be to your advantage that you play 2 sports, and that when you're being recruited, if you're telling the coach you'll choose that one sport that you can get so much better if you're really focused and committed. So for you, that could look really good, because what could your potential be if you focused on that one sport? So being a multi-sport star can actually help you in that recruitment process, knowing that the coach thinks you're going to choose one sport. Um, if you do have the ability to play two sports, you got to be, some coaches are going to be against that when you go to college, and it really depends on where you go. So during the recruitment process, if that's something you want to do, that's something you need to address. And you need to know if the coaches are okay and on board with that, or if they're not. Because if they're not, you might be miserable if you're trying to play two sports, as in the case for me. So make sure you're asking those questions during the recruitment process. It doesn't always have to be the coaches are asking the questions. You should be asking questions of the coaches to see if it's a good fit, as well as the school, if it has the right major and all those things. So it's really important that you're proactive in asking those questions for yourself. So I think it can work out if you find the right fit. I know a lot of student athletes who do more than one sport, and they're very happy, and they don't want to give up one, and it works for them, provided you find the right school and the right coaches that it works for. So I would just encourage you to ask the right questions, to look at the right schools, and sometimes it works out for you.
Well, thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Coach Ryan. It looks like that's it for questions. So thank you to everyone for attending, and for hopefully you learned some great stuff about college recruiting. As we mentioned, we will send out a follow-up email with contact information, as well as a recording of this presentation. So if you have any future questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you to our two presenters. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.